Our top story, which is all about the resumption of talks about nuclear weapons, not having them really between Iran and the US. America had walked out of a deal that Iran had with the Western powers 7 years back, and now with Donald Trump back in office, the entire issue of getting Iran into the mainstream without sanctions has come up if it complies to what the US wants in terms of not developing any nuclear weapons. And to talk about it, with us we have Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary, the Ministry of External Affairs. Good evening to you, Ambassador Bhattacharya. What do you make of these talks? It's being mediated by Oman, and so far it seems that things have gone well, and another round could be possible next week.
Well, thank you for this invitation. Firstly, I would say that this is a very welcome decision at a time when we are facing tariff wars going across the world. To actually have negotiations is a very positive sign. It is made more positive by the fact that the Americans, particularly President Trump, had walked out of JCPOA in 2018. And therefore, this is very, very positive. And I must say that this has not happened without any background. President Trump had written to the supreme leader of Iran, and he had received a response back. And then there were suggestions that they could actually have talks on this matter. President Trump wanted direct talks, but I think the Iranians preferred an option of indirect talks. And Oman, which has traditionally been a key mediator in the region, not only between Iran and US in the past. In fact, they had mediated the Barack Obama consultations and final talks as well. It's very nice to hear that the Omanis are back in their mediatory role, because they have a very special significance in this particular issue in bridging the gaps. As you mentioned, I think the talks have been, as they described, positive and constructive, and they've decided to go in for a second round in a week's time. So it's a very welcome step.
And for all practical purposes, the deal this time around will be quite different from what it was earlier, because, well, the first time around Donald Trump was very unhappy with it. He said it's an unfair deal, it's an unequal deal, and he walked out of it. And now it seems even Iran might be positively disposed towards more strict controls in exchange for some economic benefits, which probably it needs quite badly.
Absolutely. I think the details of this have not been spelled out by the two parties, but I think there's enough that's circulating amongst the various interlocutors on this particular issue. I think from the Iranian perspective, they have said that they're prepared to discuss the nuclear program, and they wish to talk about the relief on the economic sanctions. They're also very anxious that this does not drag on till the 18th of October, when there could be a snapback of the sanctions at the Security Council. Remember the old deal that was done in 2015. From the American side, I think we've heard that Witkoff mentioned that he would wish to see the dismantling of the nuclear program. But I think he's also mentioned that the red line is, and President Trump has mentioned that as well, that the red line is that the Iranians should not have nuclear weapons. So I think in some ways the red lines have been drawn. The Iranians are trying to tempt and entice the Americans into coming into a deal in which they can have an economic interest as well. The Iranian president has made a very interesting remark, stating that the supreme leader has said that the Americans can even come and invest in Iran. Now, that is quite an extraordinary statement if this were actually the case. So I think there are these broad issues. There is another dimension of that which came out from the Omani mediators, who have talked about the need for regional peace and stability. And I think that is also an important consideration, given that the Israel-Palestine war has been continuing for a fairly long period of time, given that the axis of resistance in which Iran had led the forces of Hamas, of the Hezbollah, and in Syria has been largely depleted and in some cases overthrown. So, there is this need that is to prevent a further escalation of the situation. But at the end of the day, I think Trump will not accept something that is not palatable from his perception of denying Iran the option of having a nuclear weapon. And for that, he will definitely insist on the strictest kind of controls.
Okay. Well, it's clear that not only the region would benefit if a deal was to take place and the sanctions against Iran were to be lifted. India could itself be a significant beneficiary if that happens, not just where oil is concerned, but even the kind of transit plans that we have been working on with other nations as well. But who needs it more badly in terms of the two principles involved? Is it Donald Trump or is it Khamenei?
I think, if President Trump were actually to realize this particular deal, he would give himself this badge of being the president for peace that he has often said that he is. And this would be a real feather in his cap for that. But I think in addition to that, what would happen is that the regional situation would certainly calm down significantly. We will still have to wait and see how the Israelis will react to whatever goes on, because Prime Minister Netanyahu was on record recently saying that he wants Iran to roll back the nuclear program so that it does not have nuclear weapons. Otherwise, there has to be an operation, a military operation, which takes out the military nuclear capability. So in that sense, I think there are positives for everyone. And if the sanctions were to be lifted, you're absolutely right. I think this would be a game changer for the region, not only in terms of the hydrocarbon economy, but also in terms of our connectivity and our trade options and our economic cooperation options. And in some ways, it would give the Iranians a certain profile in which they could engage much more actively with the neighboring region.
And is that a certainty that the condition would be that Iran completely give up its nuclear program? And if that is the condition, would Iran really give it up?
Well, Iran is a signatory to the NPT, and under that, it is bound by its obligations not to go nuclear in terms of having nuclear weapons. What Iran has often said is that it does not wish to have nuclear weapons, but it wishes to have a civilian nuclear program. But I think there is a lot of mistrust that is there, both about what Iran really wishes to do, because it also has various enrichment programs which take it up to a fairly high level, and to get to
60% or around that
a short step away. But at the same time, I think there is a lot of mistrust on Iran's part as well, about some of the regional players, about the US as well, and about Israeli intentions. So I think in the first step, they will have to remove these cobwebs of mistrust that exist between the two sides. And in that case, I think since in JCPOA they had agreed to a certain regime of inspections, which would have enabled the inspectors, IAE and others, to ensure that Iran did not go beyond the threshold, and it would have got Iran back into the global system. So let us see where we are today. In some ways, I think the old JCPOA plus kind of an arrangement would be something that would be acceptable to Trump. Of course, the red line is that there can be no nuclear weapons.
Right. Well, we'll have to wait and see if things do move forward in the direction that the entire world really desires. It does seem that right now things are developing in a positive manner, but again, there's a lot still to be gone through. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about it, Ambassador Bhattacharya.